Well, Jim Rome is burning, ended on ESPN in 2012, but you better believe we're still burning here on this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today. Tyler Jones here with you. Thanks for joining us. I got 5 burning questions for your Seattle Seahawks before they begin free agency on Monday. We'll go over those questions coming up in just a bit, and we'll see if we can find the answers of sorts here on today's show. Let's jump right at it with question 1, and it's the linebacker position. What will the Seattle Seahawks do at the inside linebacker spot? Are the Seahawks going to bring back Bobby Wagner and Jordyn Brooks? Are they going to re-sign Patrick Queen? What is this team going to do with this position group? They sure as hell don't need to be bringing back Devin Bush, I can tell you that much. But what is the plan going forward? Because you can see Bobby Wagner and Jordyn Brooks aren't bad options at all. Bobby would be a short-term deal at this point in his career. Jordyn Brooks would be looking for a long-term contract. But then there's Patrick Queen, who Mike Macdonald is very familiar with, coaching him with the Baltimore Ravens. And we saw Patrick Queen look like one of the best linebackers in football the last couple of seasons. He's just starting to get into his prime. But it's all about the Benjamins, right? Patrick Queen would cost more money than Bobby Wagner and Jordyn Brooks would combined. So what will the Seahawks do? Could they stick with what they got? Could they bring in Patrick Queen? Could they mix and match? All that remains to be seen, and we don't really have a clear indication one way or the other of what these Seahawks are going to do at the position. We'll see what happens here. I got to tell you, I would be perfectly fine with just bringing Bobby and Jordyn back and keeping things as is with those guys. Or if you want to spend the money for Patrick Queen, if that's what Mike Macdonald feels like he's comfortable with the guy that knows his system, that's played at a high level, that's just entering his prime, that's okay too. So, let's ask you guys, who would you rather have on this Seahawks team next season? Old reliable Bobby Wagner come back again, or would you rather bring in some fresh blood like a guy like Patrick Queen? It's our pinned comment today. Type B for Bobby Wagner, P for Patrick Queen. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Number 2. The Leonard Williams equation. The Seahawks gave up a lot for Leonard Williams at the trade deadline, a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick, but they still have to pay him a lot of money if he's going to stay in town. So the question becomes, are they going to get a deal done? And then if they're not going to get a deal done, what is the backup plan then? Because Leonard Williams became a lethal weapon, if you will, for this Seahawks defense at the end of 2023. He looked like the best player on this Ravens defense, on this Seahawks defense, rather, as he ended up with 5.5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, became the first player in the NFL to play 18 games in a regular season since 1930. So not only did you get a lot of production out of Leonard Williams, but you also got a guy that was dependable as well. And for me, I think it would be malpractice if John Schneider does not get a deal done for Leonard Williams, because you didn't make the postseason. So it wasn't like a situation where you were just trying to rent a guy, a rental of sorts, to get you over the edge for one run here. You made an investment with the idea that you were going to bring him back long term. So for me, I don't even want to hear about a backup plan involving Leonard Williams. I just want to bring him back one way or the other. What do you guys think? Are the Seahawks going to be able to re-sign Leonard Williams or not? Why for yes and for no? Wait in the comment section. Tell me what you think. Question number 3 that I have for the Seattle Seahawks is the interior of the offensive line. It was a big topic in 2023 with the struggles that they faced. And all 3 starters from a season ago are set to become free agents. And one thing I'll say here is that although this is a big area of concern, it is something that the Seahawks need to address. They do have some younger options at this spot, comparatively speaking to the defensive side of the ball at middle linebacker, where you don't really have younger options to turn to necessarily. So it's break them down one by one here. Damien Lewis, he's a free agent. He has been the most consistent offensive lineman for the Seattle Seahawks over the last few seasons here. And I think ideally you would like to find a way to bring back Damien Lewis if you can. Evan Brown was your starting center last year, came over from the Detroit Lions, and was a pretty solid player for a relatively cheap cost. Did not cost you a ton of money, so I wouldn't be opposed to potentially bringing back Evan Brown either, but Evan Brown is not going to be your long-term solution. Eventually, whether it's Olu or if it's somebody else, you're going to need to invest long-term at that spot. And then there's Phil Haynes, which I do not believe that Phil Haynes is going to be back. He's had too many injury issues to deal with. He'll be the very first one replaced on this Seahawks offensive line. So what about the young cats that you have internally? You look at Anthony Bradford, and there's the possibility of him starting at the offensive guard spot. And from what we saw out of Anthony Bradford last year was he was very raw. And there was times where he looked like a deer in headlights. He will have to work on his pass blocking. That is going to be crucial, especially in this air raid scheme under new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. There's going to be a big emphasis on the passing game, and Anthony Bradford's going to need to take some huge steps in the right direction to be able to be trusted as a pass blocker if he is going to assume a starting role. And then there's Olu Oluwatimi, who could potentially be the starting center if Evan Brown's gone or if they don't bring in another veteran. And there's still question marks about Olu at this point. There's still the great unknown when it comes to him. He might end up being great. Remember, he was the best center in all of college football just a couple of seasons ago. But we just don't know when it comes to Olu of who he is and what he's going to be. It's just too early to tell. The jury is still out on him as far as that goes. More to come here on Seahawks Today in just a moment, but first, want to remind you to join us coming up on Monday, bright and early, 10 a.m. Pacific time, for our live coverage of day number 1 of NFL free agency frenzy. We're going to have a great time. We're going to react to the first round of moves as they come in real time. I'll be here, Smitty will be here, and if the Seahawks make any moves, we're going to go live, and it's going to be a hell of a time coming up on Monday morning. So make sure and join us. Coverage begins 10 a.m., and we'll see how long this goes. Could be an exciting day, maybe an eventful day, but no matter what, we're going to be all over here on the channel. Subscribe now. Make sure and join us coming up Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, live right here on Seahawks Today. We already know that Geno Smith is coming back to the Seahawks roster in 2024, but what about Drew Lock in the backup quarterback position? If Drew Lock is going to return, then you'd have to assume he'll be QB2 and things will go from there. But if he doesn't, what is the plan to replace him at backup quarterback? Is it to go with a veteran, or is it to draft a young quarterback out there to sit behind Geno Smith and potentially replace Geno Smith eventually? We saw Drew Lock have some flashes of brilliance at times last year. I think we all kind of point to the Monday night game against the Philadelphia Eagles where he led that come-from-behind win, was excellent in the 2-minute drill and everything. Drew Lock looked really good. Drew Lock, I have no problems at all with Drew Lock being your backup quarterback. I think it's perfectly fine to have him as your backup, but that's just it. Drew Lock will be a career backup for the rest of his career, and he seems to like it in Seattle. He and Geno seem to get along well, but do you want to go forward with that? Here's the thing, okay, just being real with y'all here. If the Seahawks do re-sign Drew Lock and bring him back, then Seattle's probably not drafting a quarterback this year. Because in theory, you only need 2 quarterbacks on the active roster. So why would you bring Drew Lock back if you were going to draft a quarterback here? In theory, if you're going to draft a quarterback, that guy should be your number 2 quarterback and not Drew Lock. So we'll see what the Seahawks do. Should Seattle bring back Drew Lock? What do you guys think? S for sign, P for pass. What would you do on Drew Lock? Let us know what you think. S for sign, P for pass. Our final question. Question number 5. Question quattro. What will the Seahawks do at the tight end position? That's part one of the equation. And then part two, how will the tight end position be used in the Seahawks offense? We already know about Will Dissly getting cut. And then you got to figure out what you're going to do with Noah Fant and Colby Parkinson. Personally, I like Noah Fant a lot. I would like to see Noah Fant come back. I think that he was held back in this Seahawks offense last year and really in the Pete Carroll era, not just in the Shane Waldron era, but even prior to that. The Seahawks have not properly used their tight ends and gotten the most out of them. They have not been effective with the tight end position like they should be. I think Noah Fant is much better than the opportunity he was presented than what he was given last year of what he could potentially perform. I would bring Noah Fant back personally, but still try to go get another tight end as well, whether it's in the draft or a veteran, whatever it may be, and try to make the tight end role a pivotal part of your offense. You look at the teams that were in conference championship games last year. What did they all have in common? They all didn't have franchise quarterbacks, but they all had elite tight end play. The Chiefs with Travis Kelce, the Niners with George Kittle, the Ravens with Mark Andrews, the Lions with Sam Laporta. That's the recipe for success in the National Football League. If having an elite offense, you got to have an elite tight end, and the Seahawks could certainly use that. Thanks for joining us here on this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today. I will be all over free agency over the next couple weeks, so follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, for updates throughout the free agency frenzy at Tyler Jones Live. You can find me there, and I will see you next time right here on this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today. Appreciate you joining us. We'll see you then.